So we were talking a little bit about the tomb of Seti I, KV 17, so not the temple that we have discussed with the hieroglyphs, but the tomb. And what I wanted to show you is that this is part of the basis of my answer to, for instance, the Afrocentrist community, among others, when they were talking about the real and true color of the Egyptians. Now, given this is a lot more interesting and deep than the skin tone of a population. In fact, if anything, that's one of the least interesting aspects of an ancient civilization. It's just that it's unfortunately a battlefield for war within the culture war, and therefore that's why it's often brought up. But today I don't necessarily want to focus on that too much. I'll present a couple of things, a couple of points, but I do want to discuss the broader point, which can be used when talking about preservation of pigments in both the Bronze Age, Iron Age, all the way up to classical antiquity, and how color and pigments react to exposure to the weather, but also, unfortunately, manumission and intervention of external sources, including us, human beings. So, you know, when I said very early on, as I was showing you a little bit about this study, which once again is from the University of Florence, for you who are interested, it was the Department of Architecture, University of Florence, Italy. The reason why you have a connection between the tomb of Seti I and the University of Florence is the same reason as to why you have the same connection with France, Louvre, in fact. And that's because if you look at this image on the right, you will notice that this is the map, the 2D map of the tomb of Seti I that we've just discussed. And as you see, there is a staircase. And so you enter, and as you go into section F to section G, and you go up the staircase as you are exploring the tombs, then you'll notice that in this zoomed in picture, you will notice that on both sides of these walls, the walls are covered with artistic representations and pictorial art. And two plates, we could say, were removed by archaeologists. One was sent to the Florence Egyptian Museum, and it is found there right now. And the other one was sent into the Louvre Museum and can be found and examined there. That's why you have this connection. Elements were removed and these elements were transported. And unfortunately, at least when we talk about the one in Italy, these were not preserved well at all, which is really, really a shame. Look at this. On the right, we see the original picture, photograph, of the current conditions of this drawing that we see here. You will notice that, they have got black hair. Both the queen and the pharaoh have got black hair. Their skin is very dark. They've got some gold. We see some green, some blue. We can see all of this. The one on the left is how the original colors would have looked. Blue hair and blue horns on the crown. So basically what's happening here, which is one of the main items of debate and clash with the Afrocentric community when I made several videos on ancient Egypt, is that one of the main points of debate is that they say, they do it for the skin. I'm not interested in the skin right now. But in general, the main point of debate and argument is that these are ancient, and so the colors fade. And so whatever color we see, the original would have been darker. The reality that has been proven without any shade of a doubt by this study, I will give you a link, is that in this specific case with the tomb of Seti I, and there are several other occasions in which this happens, not just in ancient Egypt, but also in classical antiquity in the Mediterranean basin, is that oftentimes the opposite happens. Pigment darkens with time. Darkens with time. So it depends. There is no, if you hear an umbrella statement, pigment fades away, so the colors were always darker, that's wrong. In this case specifically, blue became black. Now, if you really want to talk about the ethnicity, whatever, yeah, the queen had dark skin. Totally. I would consider this a brown skin. So, yeah, sure, great, fantastic. As you know, there is a veritable cornucopia of different skin tones because, in my worldview, my position, ancient Egypt was a multi-ethnic civilization. They had people with different skin tones, as we see the way they represented themselves in art and how they represented other people. By the way, In this specific tomb, there is the very famous, some say infamous, representation of not only themselves, but also the Nubians, who are clearly black, and different from the regular Egyptian, whose skin is instead a mixture of brown and red, if we want to look at the pigments used. But do remember, oftentimes the pigments, the way they look now, are darker because of the aging. And then we see Asiatics, sometimes we see Romans, and Romans look European. The Romans look just European. Some have like kind of very fair skin. Brown hair has been shown as a representation of Romans. Black hair has been shown as a representation of Romans. So if you cut my hair, I could have been a good representative of a Roman when it comes to both, in some cases, when it comes to both skin and complexion. But sometimes they have a lighter brown as well that's shown in Egyptian representations of Romans. And then you have the Asiatics tend to be very light skin, and so are the Libyans. And you can recognize the Libyans because they have an ostrich feather on their head, ostrich being a connection that the ancient Egyptians recognized with the Libyans specifically. And so we will see all of this. I'll show you some of this stuff. I do just want to focus on this because the study shows phenomenal evidence that demonstrates that color and pigment can darken with time. You can even see it with the naked eye. And they did not use the naked eye. They used all sorts of technology, like for instance the XRF spectra and a lot of other stuff that I've already actually described in details in one of my videos. Now it's been a while since I read it. When it comes to the technical aspects of it, it is spectroscopic analysis, and and it's proven a lot of the art that we see was lighter. Yeah, there we go. Look, to connect to what the archaeologist that we talked about was saying about how you prepare these walls before you start inscribing the hieroglyphs. The figures were first sketched in red, as I was telling you. The final outlines were then traced in black by another artist to create the final and correct guide for the sculptor. A coating, thin, gypsum, I don't know how to read it, you'll have to help me with this, based preparatory layer was given to ensure a homogeneous background from the chromatic and absorption point of view. The high technical quality of the tombs of Thebes, also due to the excellent quality of the rock, a fine, homogeneous and compact limestone, ensured a good preservation of the paintings observed by many travelers of the past. So already we see that someone in chat actually earlier on was saying, how are they so perfectly sketched? Because they prepare them. The main in situ causes of degradation of these architectures are infiltration of water with the consequent transport of salts, detachment of and fall of fragments, as we were discussing, but also cracks due to the mechanics of the rock layers. They reuse as dwellings, barns, hermitages, warehouses can have caused different transformations over the centuries, from carbon black deposits of lamps and fireplaces till the cuts in the rock walls. Yeah, and then there is the whole section where I remember that they discussed that, and as I say, I did read the letters where they say that look at this, exactly this. I want to read this last thing. Giambattista Belzoni discovered the tomb in 1817, but in reality it was discovered by Zahi Hawass because he discovered everything. But anyways, and he immediately realized its importance, describing it as the principal, open quotes, the principal, the most perfect and splendid monument in that country, close quotes. He did make drawings and wax casts, that already, of many decorations and staged an exhibition in England in 1821. The conservation conditions were good, and many of the early visitors said that the colors were as fresh as if the painters had just finished their work.